Okay, so now, just to finish everything up, I've executed my vision through my sketch. But I also want to think about how I can optimize it for my audience. And it's looking good, but I think all of the dark particles around are distracting a little bit from the cool font and from my spot illustration, right? Which I want to be the star of it. So I'm going to take that particle and I'm going to duplicate it onto a new layer. And I'm going to play with my options to brighten it, take the contrast down, take the brightness up, use a soft light filter instead of an overlay at 100%, and it makes it a lot brighter. And I think I like that. It helps draw your eye in to the little details, not just in the illustration itself, but in the font treatments. I can also look and just refine the effects on the font treatments. Make sure they're doing what I want them to do. Yeah, it's a little bit more powerful now. Okay. So just fine-tuning everything. Remember, when you print, you're going to be able to see everything really closely. So maybe I don't want this blue stroke on the kanji text. Or maybe I do. These are the decisions we make. I guess I do kind of like it. It sets off the color well. I like how Godzilla and the really faint drop shadow is working. So now I like this background, but I feel like it's a little bit, it pulls your eye out to the edges and it doesn't pay off. So there's a few things you can do. You can always vignette, which is to use a dodge or burn tool. So if I, say, take this background layer, this one right here, and I use burn with a large soft brush in the midtones at about an exposure that's less than 30, so I can really control it. So it's going to be faint because, actually I'm going to have to do it on highlights here because there's so much white. I can slowly darken the edges so they look a little burned in, and it's called vignetting, and it helps me focus into the center of the image. That can be helpful. It's like a gradient from the center out, but more hand done. So let's see if we like what that does. So that's without the burn effect. That's with it. I think it helps. And then maybe I want just a little bit more texture. I have the splatter texture, but behind it is something very, very clean, which is just the gradient fill. So I go back to my compositing skills and those kind of things, and I open up a Google search. I'm going to look for a vintage burned border. I found this one. This is just modeled after kind of the sloppy processing of film, which you don't see much anymore, but it has this nice vintage quality. Drag that onto the desktop. Take that image. Let's see, where do I want it? Yeah, here's a good place. Drag it on as a smart object. Enlarge it to fit my image. Remember, I have that white frame built in, so I need to shape it inside that white frame I've already built. Then I'll use different blending modes to help it fit the space. These are just finishing touches. It's easy to overdo it, but it's good to explore your options before you finalize your poster design. Okay, so now how do I get rid of the white? Well, I just play with the blending mode, right? So if I just wanted to darken and leave everything else, I can just use multiply, but I can try some others. Screen mode leaves the dark edge as the border. Looks more like the Japanese flag that way. Overlay, pin light. Just darken, which is like multiply. Color burn gives me a little bit more of the warm colors coming through. That's kind of nice. But do I want that solid black, or does that weaken some of this? So then I might play with the opacity. And I can play with its general color as well. I just have to rasterize it to do that. Or I can try, yeah, I don't want it as a cover overlay, so never mind. So I'm going to rasterize it now. And then I'll play with its color balance, shift it, especially in the shadows, more towards cooler colors. Like so. And then I can just take the saturation down a little bit so it doesn't compete again. What I've already done. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. So the burning gave me a little bit of an edge, but now that black sloppy edge makes it a lot cleaner, a lot more graphic. Now I save it. Actually, before I save it, I like to do this. So on the very top, I'll just flatten everything into one layer while keeping all of the elements. So I hold down Option and click on Merge Visible, and it will compress everything together onto the very top. And now with this layer, I just like to do auto tone, and that will even out the whole histogram. And you might not even tell what the difference is. There we go. Computer's a little slow. It's a big file, over a gig now. But it looks like it just brightened it up for me. So if I look at my history before I did auto tone, it just doesn't quite have the same punch. So that optimizes your histogram, even though my computer's a little slow to show that to you. Kind of makes the whole range work a little bit better. I can also play with levels, see if I want to deepen anything, like maybe just deepen my midtones a tiny bit, so it prints well. Maybe play with my overall hue saturation. Saturate my colors just a tiny bit overall. And color balance, I always like to kind of play my warms against my cools. Warm highlights, in midtones within reason against cooler shadows. I like that difference, but I'm actually going to select it all, copy it, make a new layer. So this actually, make a new layer. Go back before I did it, and now on that new layer, paste it in. And then I can use opacity to kind of blend the two together and find the right level of finished color and contrast. So lots of just subtle decisions to help make it what you want. Okay, the last thing you might want to add is your signature. Decide where you want to put it. And I'm just going to put it on a new little layer, paint it in. And this is the first project where we've kind of created everything from our own vision instead of just reacting to what other people have done. Let's see. Let's use kind of a cooler brush here. Shrink the size of this brush a little bit. Tricky. There we go. And save your work. And you don't want your signature to ruin it. You want it to make sense. And I usually put it on the left side, but for some reason it just doesn't fit the eye movement. So the reason I put it on its own layer is so I can move it around and adjust it, and even work with layer styles if I need to. And I would love it if you guys were proud enough of your work to be happy to give it a signature. Maybe give it a slight gradient overlay. Maybe take its saturation down just a little bit so it doesn't distract. All right.